Hey guys, I'm Jax, a non-book boy, and this is my spoiler review for the Wheel of Time Season 2, Episodes 1, 2, and 3. So if you're looking for someone to critique the show based on how it translates from the page to the screen, unfortunately this isn't going to be the review for you. But if you're looking for just some idiot who loves fantasy, who loves TV shows and movies, but has no idea about the actual source material, then this is the review for you. I'm looking at it as just a guy who wants to watch something that fills the giant chasm void that Game of Thrones left in my soul. So Season 1 I didn't love, but I didn't hate it. I know that a lot of Wheel of Time fans really didn't like this new live-action TV show version that we got. I thought it was fun. I thought it was pretty okay. I enjoyed a lot of elements. I didn't think some of it worked. I thought more worked than it didn't. The mythology of this universe I find really fascinating and interesting. I like monsters and creatures and magic and wild, crazy stuff. So for the most part, I was like pretty satisfied with just seeing like a world come to life with lots of real life sets, real locations, real costumes. I think the visual effects for the most part are really, really good. There was some stuff in Season 1 that didn't work, like the big troglodyte, Tralfamadorian, no, what are they? The Minotaur men, what are they called? This is going to happen more than once because the names are a lot. The Trollocs in Season 1 look great when there was like 5 of them or whatever, and then that big arm at the end of Season 1, I was like, you've bitten off more than you can chew. And I am sure that for a lot of people, a lot of how they kind of translate all this stuff doesn't work. But for me, just coming into this series and being like, I just want to be entertained. I want to be interested. I want to kind of be swept away with the magic and mystique and kind of wonder of this fantastical universe. And for the most part, in these first 3 episodes, I found myself thoroughly engaged. I found myself finding this season to be stronger so far. I think that comes down to just we're in a more interesting place. A lot of the characters are in really kind of interesting places for their stories, that it's just kind of more entertaining than the kind of origins and the beginnings of a story. So who knows where it's going to go from here. But overall, I wouldn't say overwhelmingly impressed. This is no Game of Thrones, but I feel like as people who love fantasy, who if you're watching this video, I'm sure you love fantasy, we have been kind of starved of good fantasy, especially when we're translating it from other things. The most recent thing that comes to mind is Rings of Power, which at a certain point I just started to enjoy because it was so horrendously just broken backwards and just terrible and ridiculous and just was making so many decisions left, right, and center that were just so bad. And I started to kind of enjoy just how ridiculously stupid it was. Whereas this show, because I have no kind of, preconceived notion of what I want the show to be, what I want this kind of universe to look like from any source material, I found it to be pretty interesting. I wouldn't say it is like a 10 out of 10. This is no Better Call Saul or Succession. Some of the writing and plotting and stuff in it doesn't fully work at times, but for the most part, I think this is an improvement over Season 1. And I would love to know, if you've read the books, how is it faring? Are there just insane, crazy choices they're making? Is it entirely different? Is this a The Witcher? I also watched The Witcher. I can't even remember what I saw in that. That felt so just kind of nothing after Season 1. Season 1 I love. Season 2 and 3. I don't, it's nothing. It's not very good, and I know people who love that universe and that lore and the mythology of The Witcher from the books and the games and all that stuff are even more disappointed than I am, which I cannot fathom because I was like, that's nothing. This, on the other hand, I feel like it surely must be an improvement. I even think just the acting of our main kind of 5 characters, they've all improved. I feel like I didn't really think Rand felt like our main character, our Harry Potter, our Aang the Last Airbender. He didn't feel like he had that gravitas or that just kind of charismatic kind of vibe and feeling of someone who's going to carry the series as our main lead who's going through this giant hero's journey as our chosen one character. And in this, he's got the buzz cut. He's gone off to join the army, shaving off that red hair, which I have to imagine is, I don't know, an odd choice. I feel like the fact he had red hair, I just kind of imagine in the books, everyone's imagining this long flowing red hair and he's just big and muscly and just the hero. I didn't feel like he was a good choice in season 1, whereas what we've seen in season 2, I feel like he is much improved. He feels like he's understanding the character a little bit more, and I feel like I could say that for all of them. For Perrin, for Nariv, the strong magic lady, the less strong magic lady who's less arrogant and angry all the time. She's also really good. Matt. All right, well, before I get to all those characters, overall, this first 3 episodes I found to be really, really good. I love that Prime Video is like, have 3, and then we'll trickle out the rest of the season week by week. It's a really, really fun way to kind of throw us fully into the world, give us a huge amount of time with these characters, and kind of make you fully invest, and then we can kind of get smaller segments. I think it really, really works for pretty much any show. I love it for The Boys, and I love it for this. So let's start with Moiraine, Rosamund Pike, as our lead kind of Gandalf character. Our character who kind of grabs our characters and throws them into the journey. I found her kind of plot in these first 3 episodes really interesting, really kind of different than what you get usually for a character like this. I really like the idea that at the end of the first season, she loses her magical powers, her channeling of the one source, the one power, or whatever it's called. And I really love the idea of kind of putting these characters where it's like, and like the mythology behind their Aes Sedai and the dudes. What are they called? The boys, the dude guys. I am not going to remember all the terminology and all the magical wordy nonsense. So her bodyguard character, Lan, and her Moiraine, let's go with Moiraine for now. I could Google it, but I won't. I like this show a lot. Not enough to Google what the words are, though. So the lore behind the Aes Sedai and their bodyguards and having them kind of be bonded magically, or just, so I feel like it's magically where they're connected, where one cries and the other is sad. There's something he says in season 1 where he's like, oh, I shouldn't have had those couple of drinks. Every time I drink, you get sad. So they're kind of magically connected. So what happens when that magic is kind of severed and cut off? Like, what happens to these characters? And so many times we get told in season 1 where, like, if a character, like the Aes Sedai, the magical witch ladies, they lose their magic. Anyone who can tap into the one true source, when you lose your magic, you end up just wanting to kill yourself, or you feel like you're nothing anymore and you kind of become hollow and not really human anymore. It's not really living. So it's like kind of a something worse than death almost, which is kind of horrifying on its own. But the idea of like, where do these characters go now they've been split? And Lan, being the kind of heroic character and like the stoic man that he is, he's still kind of bonded to her just through all their adventures and their journeys together. So he still wants to be with her, but she's kind of pushing him away. And all of that stuff I found really interesting and really engaging and really heartbreaking. That point where she like pushes him away and is like, you were never the same as we were never equals. And like, because they can never lie as well, which is like a really cool little kind of thing with those characters, those magic witch ladies, where they can't lie. So if they need to lie, they need to kind of manipulate their words and kind of twist it in a certain way. Like she's like, Rand, he's gone. And he's like, oh man, that means he's dead. And she's like, yes. And so all of that stuff I found to be really cool. Like, I love the idea that she's just like hell-bent on this one little mysterious mission. Presumably when she's looking through all the parchments and doing all that stuff in those first episodes, it is her trying to figure out how to get her magic back, or trying to figure out, like, Rand did something at the end of season 1, and it probably wasn't killing the Dark One, or the Dark Lord, or I think he's called the Dark One. The Voldemort character, I have a lot to say about that dark guy. I was not what I was expecting whatsoever. I think I like the direction it's going, but it really threw me, especially at the end of season 1. I was like, he's just a guy? Okay. Thought he was going to be more of like an entity, more of a Sauron, Arya Sauron kind of situation. but he's just a guy who's like standing about and having conversations. I think I love that. I think we'll get to that. But I love the idea that Moiraine is like kind of hellbound on this mysterious little mission, and she's pushing him away because it feels like, I don't know, she's kind of like almost embarrassed that she like lost her powers, where she's like, it takes so many sexy lady witches to do a certain thing, and this guy just like snapped his fingers and took my power away. It takes like 8 of us to do that. And so she's almost embarrassed how she lost her powers, so she's kind of pushing him away, the person who's closest to him, someone who's like closer than like a sexual partner or a mother or a son. And all of that I found to be like really, really, really cool. And then it kind of leads to them obviously kind of teaming back up again, but kind of the transition of that and us kind of stewing in that kind of fractured relationship. And then we got all those older ladies who are always like, Lan's got his shirt off. It's pretty hot. Maybe you should take your pants off too while you're training. All of that stuff is pretty fun. I feel like I didn't love Lan in season 1, whereas something about just the way he's kind of positioned through the story and like where he's positioned with Moiraine, his like partner in life, due to the bodyguard magic witch kind of situation and where they've put it, I found all of that to be like shockingly powerful. And I was suddenly kind of like, wait, I think I love these characters. I think I really, really enjoy how they're presenting. Rosamund Pike, I remember being like, okay, you've got the main star. Like everyone else, pretty much, I feel, I want to say pretty much everyone is someone I've never seen in anything, whether it's their first role or they've just been in little bit roles in TV shows and movies. She's like the main actress. That's the Gone Girl. And she creates kind of almost a Gone Girl situation where she's like charismatic and charming and sexy, like when you just look at her, but underneath that, she's quite cold and menacing, and she can be quite heartless and brutal. Reminded me a lot of Gone Girl, to be honest. Maybe just because I watched Gone Girl recently, because apparently I love watching things that make me very sad and upset inside. I don't know, there was just something really kind of interesting about like, okay, this is the Gandalf character, and she didn't die like Gandalf does and come back even more powerful. Now I'm the white Gandalf, and he rips his robes off and he's all white and everyone's like, ah! She's like, I just don't have any powers. It's like she went from white Gandalf to grey, or not even grey Gandalf, to like just the guy with a grey like cloak on. Like it's really kind of like, it's interesting, and it's kind of like scary. Like it's like, will she ever get the magic back? I kind of feel like she will. But I like the idea that we, like, I mean, obviously, if you've read the books, you're like, well, no, obviously in book 4, she gets the powers back when she does this thingamajiggy and gets the MacGuffin and puts the MacGuffin into this other MacGuffin and gets the powers back or whatever. But I love that uncertainty. Like, can she just will the power back? Is it all in her mind? Or is it something way more? Like, is she no longer an Aes Sedai or whatever they're called? The Magic Witch Ladies. I'm going to call them Magic Witch Ladies. The language, it's not soaked into my bones yet. It will be, hopefully. Maybe I'll audiobook the books at some point. 14 books though, it's too much. I really love that moment where all the Fadey bunch are attacking the Nazgul knockoffs. They're all attacking, and she goes to do some magic. She's trying to will it out of her, and you like see some of the magic appearing, the weaving of the channeling of the magic, whatever it's called, and it's coming up around it, and you're like, whoa! She's like in a life or death situation, she's gonna call it back, and it turns out there's just a bunch of witch ladies behind her. I thought that was a really fun little twist, quick little moment of like, oh, it's gonna be that easy. Oh no, it's potentially gone forever. Speaking of the Nazgul knockoffs, in season 1, I found those cloaked kind of servants of the Dark One to be, like, it feels rude to say it, but like painfully derivative, like really underwhelming. And like I don't hate the visual. I actually quite like the visual, just because cloaked men and like without the no eyes or noses, just like this soulless, faceless being, but they've got teeth, mouth, teeth kind of things going on. It is a great visual vibe, but it does remind me of when I first saw the Dementors way back when Harry Potter 3 came out. And I'm like, oh, they're just Nazgul knockoffs. They just look the same. Black cloaked things, and they're creepy, and they're ghoulish, and they're demon monstery kind of characters. And I've come back around on that, of course, because there's only so many demon monster cloak kind of vibes you can give, and they do feel very different, the Dementors to the Nazgul, and so do these Fade boys. The Fade do look very different, and their visual vibe is really interesting, but they just felt like they weren't giving me anything extra. They were just like these servants of the Dark One, like the Nazgul, but they weren't giving me anything new where I was like, well, I can't see the faces of the Nazgul, and I can't see the face of the Fadey bunch. So the Fade felt like, I don't know, derivative and underwhelming and just like Nazgul knockoffs. But in this season, in these 3 episodes, we find out, and I don't know if this is due to budget or just really poor direction and like staging and blocking where they didn't make it clear in season 1. But in season 1, I did not understand or get at all that they could kind of move through shadows, disappear under one shadow and then appear out of another shadow. Like, they are shadow moving monsters. And that fight scene was spectacular. Easily the highlight in terms of action. All the action in the show is really, really fun. Love me some sword fighting. Love me some magical sword fighting. And a lot of the weaving of the channeling magic or whatever feels kind of unclear what their power levels are and what they can and cannot do. They have really not kind of elaborated on all that. So, I don't know. For the magic, it all looks great, but I'm always a little bit confused. Whereas the second episode, I think it was, where Lan's fighting them off, and Moiraine's fighting them off, they're jumping through shadows, which is super cool. And no longer do they feel like Nazgul knockoffs, even though I will always kind of see them as Nazgul knockoffs. They have this extra layer of dimension and power skills, and it's just really threatening, really menacing, really, really scary. The idea that any shadow anywhere they can just pop out of and attack you is super cool, and then disappear out of that shadow and appear over there. So all of that was amazing. I kind of feel like season 1, they just didn't like go fully into that kind of mythology and lore, whereas the fact they're doing it now is super, super cool. Loved all of that quite a lot. In terms of the casting of our main 5 characters in season 1, I think Matt was maybe my favorite in terms of acting. I thought he gave and just like had the vibe of someone who felt like he was close to turning to the dark side. He had this certain charisma that felt quite sinister and evil, like he was likable, but I could see him falling to the dark side. I could see there was just something about his character where I'm like, I don't know if we can trust this guy. And of course, all of that came with the magic knife, the evil magic knife of doom that he touched, and all of that stuff. And then there was some weird stuff where he didn't go through the portal in season 1, and looking into it in the behind the scenes, turns out that they filmed like those first 6 episodes, and then he didn't come back after COVID, and then he didn't come back for season 2. So I was really disappointed, like, that he wasn't going to come back. And I felt unsure how I was going to feel with this new casting. And to be honest, when I saw this new guy, just seeing his vibe, just like the way he presented himself in his very first scene in this season, and then when he was locked up with the Red Witch, the first scene, I kind of didn't like his vibe. It felt like they had the perfect casting of someone who had that sinister vibe, and maybe he was going to be good, but I could see him going dark just by looking at him. Just the casting was great. And so this time, it felt like they had kind of gotten the CW equivalent. He's a little sexier. He's a little kind of more boyish. And so I don't know if that works for the books and all that stuff. But just as watching the show, I was like, I don't think we've got someone as good. But I was easily kind of turned around on him. And I'm a simple man. Simple little things are going to get me kind of back on board with someone. And just that moment where, to show that he's been in there for 5 months, she's like locking the door and there's all the sounds of her like closing the door, locking the door. And he's just kind of, and he's like moving his hands and kind of, I don't know, just like he has seen her close the door and lock the door and leave so many times. He's just like mimicking it with his hands and the sounds of her leaving before he goes and tries to Shawshank Redemption his way out of there. And I'm like, okay, I'm a simple man. I'm easy to please sometimes, apparently. And I was back on board. And then with all his interactions, he Shawshank Redemptioned his way into the other cell. And we've got Min, the magical, can read the future lady. And I really liked her in her little brief kind of appearance in season 1. I liked the idea of the character. I love someone who can see the future, and just every time she looks at someone, she just sees the most horrible, awful thing that they're going to do in the future. And it's just a really interesting kind of scary kind of power for a character to have. And all of their interactions were great. I loved all of that. And I think I am fully on board with the recasting of Matt. One thing that I'm horrified about is the fact they've made Matt, just due to the recasting, just due to who they've cast as this new Matt, he seems more likable, he seems less evil, and yet the first vision Min gets of him is of stabbing Ran, our main character, our dragon reborn, and presumably killing him, which obviously won't happen because Rand, I imagine, like Harry Potter, is immortal, essentially, and won't be killed by Matt, but it's a really kind of unpleasant kind of foreboding thing of what will happen for Matt and the dark path that he's presumably on. So all of that I found really, really interesting. I loved just all their little interactions. Him and Min was really, really cool. A little bit of cheeky little sexual tension there where they're like, hey, I'm not flirting with you. And she's like, I don't want to come in there if you're flirting with me. And I'm like, he's not fully flirting, but he's flirting enough where I want them both to. And of course, because this show hates me, as soon as I like their camaraderie and their kind of friendship together, she's like, we're getting all the things, get on the horse, you do this thing, I'm just going to go off here and do something that's definitely not sus. And then as soon as she walks away, I'm like, she's going to be evil or whatever. And she was put in that cell intentionally to kind of twist Matt in some way. And then the red woman, the blonde red woman, is like, the red witch lady is like, I've got nefarious plans for you and Matt or whatever. And then Min is like, yep, okay, I guess I'm a bad guy. I don't think she's going to be like a fully bad guy, but I love that for the story and where it's taking the characters. But I'm just like, oh, as soon as I like their friendship, one of them, not the one I expected, has got sinister motivations. So let's talk Perrin. Perrin is an interesting character. Towards the end of season 1, he gets some yellow eye things going on, and every time he gets the yellow eyes, we hear like wolves, and there's wolves running about, or dog wolf things going on. And immediately my thought is like, okay, my lord, this man's a werewolf. That's crazy. This guy's a werewolf. It appears he is not a werewolf. He can see visions of what's happened in the past, and not like Min where he can see things that's going to happen in the future, but he sees, he goes into a room and he's talking to people and he's like, oh wait, no, this has already happened, and he can see a battle play out after the fact. So he's got some kind of magical foresight situation going on, and I'm not really sure how that connects with the wolves. That's not a thing wolves can do, as far as I'm aware. I'm not a wolf expert, but I don't think that's what wolves can do. So he appears to not be a werewolf, but maybe he is. I kind of hope he is. I'd love to see him transform into a wolf. Would love that. All of that is pretty damn interesting and cool. I just love magical powers. I don't know if this is, as I said, as I'm going to keep saying with every character, I don't know. Is this book accurate? Is this lore accurate? I don't know. I don't not care, but because I don't have any kind of love or knowledge of the books, I'm just seeing it as a show. And so far, really interesting powers. I love how every character just has a lot going on. As the character says, either in season 1 or season 2, they're just these 5 people. One of them is the dragon reborn, but all of them, the reason that Moiraine thought it could be any of them is because they've all got this big tie to the wheel, to the pattern, to the magical kind of connection of everything. And I love that. It's so cool. I love the idea that all these people are really special in their own unique way. It's I don't know. It's a fantasy show. Of course, they're all going to be very, very important to the story. They're our main characters. But the way it's been presented, how they're all so unique and different, I'm really enjoying. And so Perrin's plot for the first couple of episodes, it's pretty interesting. He meets another kind of tracking werewolf sight-seeing character, and I loved him. He had a really great vibe. That moment when they see one of the Fadey bunch just put up there, those knockoff Nazguls, and he's just hung up and strung up and killed, and someone's put a big stake through his head or his brain or whatever, and he's just dead, and they're like, what could kill a knockoff Nazgul? And it turns out it's that tribe, that foreign tribe from across the sea, that at the end of season 1, they are the definition of overkill. I don't really know what's up with them so far, except they seem very, very evil, and they are willing to tsunami one little child on the ocean. So they are willing to like really go for broke and just kill a child by tsunamiing the entire kind of ocean beach area, which is, I don't know what was up with that finale. That's an insane way to end a season. Just tsunami and there's just one little girl being like, horrifying. So we get a little bit of a battle and a skirmish and everyone's fighting and it's all really, really cool. All the action, really, really great. And the new foreign enemy characters, who I want to call them mute ladies, but it doesn't appear they're all mute. I remember in season 1, they all had like masks over their mouths so they couldn't speak. So they were just like weaving the magic just without saying anything. So I don't know if that makes them unique and special, or if that's just like, I don't know, a way to kind of channel it more powerfully, or just to kind of make them different. I don't know. I don't know. I like the vibe. It's one of those things that makes me really enjoy this season and this show in general, even though it's not like perfect by any means. Just like the visual, like, of seeing like some of those characters and their costumes and their designs. At the end of the episode 2, they bring up like the queen lady of their tribe, and it's very like King Leonidas from 300, very kind of Egyptian kind of feeling, and they're all carrying her on this giant pyramid kind of thing. And I just love the visual elements and like the costume design of everything. Really, really cool. What really threw me for a loop though is the Dark One is just standing there. He's just standing there right next to them, like just like a guy. I don't know. I feel like for all of season 1 up until the finale, or whenever we saw him go from that like his like eyes were all fire and he is all twisted, gross looking, non-human, humanoid kind of looking thing. And then he was just like, hey, I'm just some guy. And he's just some guy. I don't know how I feel about that, just because I feel like the way they talked about the Dark One, it felt more like Voldemort-y, more like Sauron kind of situation, where it's like this more entity kind of thing than just a guy. And I know in the end Voldemort's just a guy, but he's so non-humanoid without like the nose and the snake kind of aspects of him. He doesn't feel human the way like the rest of his like subordinates do. Whereas in this, it's just a guy. I don't know if that's just the show kind of cheapening out, or if he's just a guy. I don't know. The way they presented him and the way they hyped him up, it was like, he's not a guy. And then it's like, no, he is just like a guy. And on that, the season starts with this little girl and the troglodytes all rung up and they're like, we're angry troglodytes. We're like orcs, but different or whatever, which I'm fine with. And the little girl runs through and there's a big circle of people with cloaks on or whatever, and they're being nefarious and spooky, evil. Ugh. And then the Dark One is like, hey, little girl, touch the big orc man. And she touched the troglodyte orc man, and he's like, that guy, he's not evil. Why do you think he's evil? Because he's a disgusting, horrifying Minotaur man monster creature? No, he's just hungry. And honestly, that's fair. I'm hungry all the time. Does that make me a monster? Maybe. And so for now, I'm actually really invested and interested in the idea that the Dark One isn't some Sauron just evil for evil's sake kind of character. And he's more of like a, hey, I want these things and I'm like motivated in this way. And they want to paint me as a monster because they're my enemies. And that's what enemies do to their enemies. They paint you in a certain light. They kind of see you a certain way. But I just feel like the way that the story has been structured, except for everything he says, is that he is more just kind of evil for evil's sake. So I'm curious how it's going to go. I'm fascinated. But I also wonder if he's going to just say a bunch of words being like, I'm not an evil guy. And then it's going to turn out, nah, he's just an evil guy. Because this show feels like it's a little bit more traditional fantasy in that, like, the bad guy is just a bad guy, evil guy. A Sauron, a Voldemort, just an evil Nazi, like a bad guy. Whereas he's like, I'm actually more nuanced. I'm no Night King situation. I'm nuanced and I have feelings and stuff. But we didn't really get more of that except for when he talks to Perrin and he's like, I'm going to watch you closely, Perrin. And that gave me strong Palpatine vibes, where Palpatine like touches little Anakin in Phantom Menace. He's like, I'm going to watch your career very closely, my next apprentice. And so I feel like he's saying he's not evil, but he's just gonna be flat out evil. Which I'm fine with. This is a fantasy show. Your bad guy can just be bad. I'm fine with that. Also, on the Perrin arc, the ogre, or the ogier, I think they call them. I'm gonna just call him an ogre. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if anyone somehow has got to this point and still read the books. The ogre guy, didn't he die in season 1? I swear Perrin walked back in the room and that guy who was like selling wares or whatever in season 1 who's there, he's like, actually, I'm a bad guy. He's got all these Fadey boys, the Fadey bunch around him. And he stabbed the ogre and killed him. Didn't he? Didn't he? I like rewatched some of those episodes very recently. I swear he died. And honestly, I feel like if it was any other character, I'd be like, I don't like it when they kill characters. They killed one of the magic girls of our main characters in season 1, and the other one magicked her back to life. And I was like, I don't like how powerful the magic is for healing. It kind of makes the stakes kind of drop like quite significantly when you just can bring anyone back with magic just by being like, oh, I'm so sad you're dead, and just you're not dead now. It's like just takes those stakes away, or it's like, just don't kill characters. Like maim them and stab them. Like Moiraine and Lan have been stabbed and sliced apart like all over the place, but they've never gone like and died, like actually died. But this guy, I guess he just didn't die. I guess I wasn't watching properly. He was probably just bleeding out or whatever. But he appears to be totally fine. But I love that ogre character, that ogier character. He's awesome. I like his vibe. I just love how he's like, you humans are just so fast and quick, and hey, you should just take a time out, guys. He feels like kind of like an Ent, but an ogre. I just like him. I like his vibe. I like his visual. He looks really cool. I love that bit where he's all like roped up and he's throwing the ropes and throwing the people and he's just throwing them left, right, and center. Really cool. I just love that character. I don't love him enough to know his name, but he's the ogre guy. And if there's no other ogres, I can just refer to him as the ogre guy. Another thing that I absolutely loved in Perrin's plot, but I think it kind of speaks to what's not working in this show, just like as a TV show, as I said, not a book boy, but like the pirate looking guy, the guy in Perrin's crew who's got the eye patch, and the eye patch has got an eye on it, and I just like that vibe. He's like, visually, I'm just like, you've almost done enough, but just like looking at him, he like tells a little story where he's like saying stuff and he's like, you're mocking me. And they're like, no, we're not. Haha. And they have a little bit of banter and then they say some other stuff. He's like, you're mocking me. Bah, bah, bah. And I'm like, that dude's gonna die. Like if anyone in this crew's gonna die, he's gonna die. And I'm gonna be meant to like feel like, oh my God, not that guy who got one moment with like one scene of dialogue that's made to make like, I'm meant to care about him now. I feel like there's so many moving elements, so many characters already. And I'm sure if you've read the books, you're like, bro, you don't even know. They haven't even introduced. This is like, we've introduced this much and you've got these more characters to be introduced. But I still feel like even if we're subtracting a lot of the cast, because it's a TV show, I want to really care about these characters. And that moment where he gets killed and the spike on the big pyramid throne thing like goes into his mouth and kills him, it's horrifying and shocking, and it got a real big response out of me, like an audible scream kind of horror. It was a great moment, but I also felt like after the fact, I'm like, oh, I was really shocking and amazing. And I feel like they tried to make me care about this character knowing they were going to do that like an episode later. But I don't know if they really got me to that place where I'm like really sad. I was just more like seeing a giant spike thing go through someone's face is generally just shocking and horrifying. So I feel like there's that where there's so many characters already. And I think most fantasy series kind of deal with this, especially when you're translating from a book that's presumably got even more characters. And you're trying to make us care about everybody. And it's tricky. It's tricky. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if it's the show's fault or if it's just like a thing of translating from a book where I liked him, but I mostly liked that he had like an eye patch like a pirate. And the eye patch had an eye on it. I was like, that's cool. But apart from that, his character itself didn't really give me anything. Let's talk Dragon Reborn. Rand. Didn't love him in season 1. Kind of, I liked towards the end where he found out he was, and you found out the things you'd seen earlier. Like there's a moment they all get out and they'd all been like listening to the demons talk in their minds. And you saw a moment where he's just like crying and someone touches him and he kind of freaks out and you're kind of like, wow, he's really reacted worse than everyone else. And you find out that's because he's actually realized that he's the Dragon Reborn. I love, like, there was a good elements towards the end, but for like leading up to that, I wasn't kind of like gravitating towards him being like our lead character. So this time he's shaved off that red hair, he's gone the buzz cut, and he's just kind of living his life, doing a thing. And I feel like in theory, on paper, I love the idea that we find out this main character, this guy who's found out he's the chosen one, and we don't show him. We don't show him for the whole first episode. Like, what's Rand doing? What's he up to? And I'm like, oh my God, what is he up to? Like, classic mystery box. Like, I love that. And then when we see him and you're like, he's just having sex with a sexy cougar lady. Okay. He's just like in a town, just like doing stuff. Someone's throwing him like a free pita bread every morning and he's like, thanks for the tortilla or whatever. And I'm like, it's like not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's not that interesting. But as the couple of episodes progress, and I think this is what really works with giving us 3 episodes at once, because there's just so much to do. Like, you can't throw all this in straight away. By the end of it, I'm like, oh, okay. So he knows that the other guy, the fake Dragon Reborn guy, who I really liked in season 1, maybe the most interesting character I found in season 1. Like, I loved that episode. I think episode 4 or 5, where he was like the centerpiece and he's just like sitting there, he's caged up and his followers come to find him. All of that stuff. That was like when I was like, wait, no, I think I do like this show. I think I really like this show, actually. Like, it's not perfect, but I like this character. I like this idea. And you kind of knew at that point that he wasn't going to be the Dragon Reborn, because it's clearly someone from the Two Rivers or whatever. But I just liked his character. So the idea that Rand has infiltrated this area and he's gone like a little bit mad already, where he kills that guy so he can take his place, so that he can be the kind of caretaker or whatever's going on of Logan? Is Logan his name? Logan? Let's call him Logan. I apologize if that's not his name. Maybe I'll put his real name here. I won't. It's late. So I really like the idea that at first we don't know what's going on, and I was a little bit like, oh, okay, what's going on? But the reveal that he's been kind of infiltrating this area, trying to meet this guy, and he meets him and all of that stuff, and just the kind of potential of where that storyline and where those two kind of characters' interactions together is going to lead is maybe the most interesting. Because the idea that this one guy who thought he was going to be the Dragon Reborn, or thought he was the Dragon Reborn, is going to maybe mentor the actual Dragon Reborn, it's ripe for tasty just stuff. I'm all about that. Love all of that. Really cool. I feel like that guy, Logain's performance, I love how unhinged he is. I love I don't know, he's one of the main actors in this show that I feel like I'm just like, I like that guy. I like what that guy is giving me. It's really good. Everyone else, it took me time to warm up to them. Whereas him, straight off the bat, I'm like, boom, I like his vibe. And now, in the position where he is, and with like Rand, I think that's going to be really cool moving forward. Another thing that I am 200% like confirmed about, like, I have a theory, but I feel like it's not a theory. It's just like what they're giving me. I'm like, I don't know. It would almost be like, I'd be so disappointed if this wasn't the case. And that's his sexy cougar lady character friend. And he's having sex with her, and he's paying for his rent by having sex with her, or whatever's going on there. Whore is not the right word for what Rand is doing, but he's having sex with her and not paying rent. So she 100, 200, 300%. I know it in my bones. She knows he's the Dragon Reborn. She must know he's the Dragon Reborn. I feel like she's going to have some kind of ulterior, secret, evil motivation. She may even be on the Dark One's side, trying to like saddle up to him and trying to kind of convert him and twist him in a certain way. I feel like if that's not the case, I'm going to be really disappointed in just that plot and that idea, just because she starts off and you're like, okay, Rand at the end of season 1 was like, I don't like this Dark One because he's trying to convince me to like stay in this magical land with my true love, but my true love wants to go do other magical things at the magical witch tower. And then straight away we see him just like having sex with some sexy cougar lady. But I feel like that doesn't, like, it's like not great if she has nothing else going on and it's just like a character that he's met. So I'm really hoping that she's got some super ulterior motivations, and I think that was almost pretty much confirmed, where he's got all the magic powers going on and they're about to have sex and she's like, I'm not afraid of you, I know who you are, and all that kind of stuff, or she says something along those lines. And so I think I'm pretty much confident in the fact that she's gonna be evil and she's gonna kind of like try and twist and kind of manipulate him in some way and push him in a way to push him back towards the Dark One, because he failed that first time when they met in season 1. So the last plot we get is with the main 2 female characters, Naive or whatever her name is, and Egwene or whatever her name is. The 2 ladies who are training to be Aes Sedai or whatever they're called. They're training to be powerful witch ladies. And at first, I didn't love anything that was going on. But then when we got to the Archways and she goes through the Archways and we get all of that plot, I found it far more interesting. I'm like, okay, now we're getting to it. Now we're getting to the kind of super magical, interesting things. She goes through the first 2 Archways and I'm like, that's cool and it's menacing. But the way they'd hyped it up, like the actual witch ladies had like hyped it up, I'm like, I'd expected it to kind of be more intense. And then she comes out and she's covered in blood. And she's like, what happened in that last archway? I'm like, oh my God, we didn't even see what's going on in that last archway? That's crazy. That's super interesting. And then to find out that that was like a fake out and she's still trapped in the archway, all of that, incredible. Love that. Everyone thinks she's dead. And then of course, with the power of friendship, her friend comes and they save her. All of that stuff, really cool. And last thing about all the witch lady magic tower place of the Aes Sedai or whatever they're called, I really, really like the rich character. She's like unintentionally obnoxious and rich, and she's like the princess of the realm or whatever. I really liked her introduction. I just thought all of that was really, really fun. I like the dynamic of someone who's so rich and kind of pompous without meaning to be. It's like unintentionally pompous and arrogant and rich. And the way she's going to vibe with our kind of peasant main characters. All of that was really interesting. Really liked her introduction. I'm hoping she's going to be a main character. She feels like she's going to be. All of that I found really, really cool. Overall, that plot ended up being like the weakest element at first. And then by the end, I'm like, oh no, I am fully invested in all these witch ladies and all the stuff that's going on there. Overall, I found these first 3 episodes to be surprisingly interesting and engaging, and I just love the mythology and the lore and the costume design and the practical locations and sets and everything about it I'm enjoying. It's not like the best thing I've ever seen, but compared to, say, a Rings of Power, it is just night and day. I think this show, for someone who has no knowledge of the books, is doing a pretty good job. I am sure, if you've read the books, they're missing out lots of elements, lots of key character bits, and probably lots of characters. I'm sure it's not really what people want, unless this is a significant improvement over season 1, in which maybe, hopefully, it is really, really good. But for someone who has no idea about the Wheel of Time books, overall, I'm giving it a 2 thumbs up so far, hopefully. I'm keen to see where it goes. I'm keen to see more crazy magical stuff and troglodytes or Trollocs, that's what they call it, Trollocs. The Trollocs look so good. I just really like their design. Orcs, Minotaur creatures, really, really cool. So overall, I'm really, really enjoying it. I don't know, like parts of it, like I feel like in season 1, parts of it I found to be kind of boring and sluggish, and kind of I was like, I can see why people aren't like impressed by this. But this season, I think, has been a huge improvement over season 1, and I'm keen to see where it goes. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all the YouTubey things. And if you're keen to see a non-book boy talk more Wheel of Time, I'll be doing the rest of the season when it comes out.